Welcome back to those who were here on Monday, and welcome for the first time for those who weren't. I was unable to, but I got to watch the session recording, which will be made available on our YouTube channel as soon as I can download it from Zoom and get it uploaded to YouTube, and I'll drop that link into the chat where you can view it. I want to be mindful of your time, so I'm going to get started. So as Becky mentioned on Monday, her and I have been working with Newleaf all summer to put together this professional development series so that we can help classified professionals grow and develop new skills. This is being paid out of a one-time funding given to all community colleges by the Chancellor's Office for professional development for classified professionals specifically. And we've had it for a couple of years, but we wanted to find something that really spoke to you. We didn't want just another job skills training or another guided pathways training. We wanted something that you could take and you could use and you could apply those skills to more than just your job. Because my personal belief is professional development is more about than just training you as workers for the college. I am more than just the job I do. The employee gets all of me, the entire me, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual of me. And so we wanted to try to address some of that. So this is part 2 of the Work-Life Balance series. And for those of you who were here on Monday, you know Bob, but I'm going to do another brief introduction. Bob Foose, optimism is the word that describes Bob. And as a versatile consultant, facilitator, keynote speaker, and coach, he's responsible for delighting Newleaf's clients with consistently outstanding work. Bob has been married to Jill since 1997 and lives in Orange, California, where they are often found roaming in search of the perfect chocolate chip cookie. Take it away, Bob.
Thanks so much. Appreciate that, Susie. Yes, that's great. Before you all came on, Susie and I were discussing our favorite chocolate chip cookies. And so we talked about the DoubleTree cookie. Not sure if any of you have ever stated a DoubleTree before, but fantastic cookie. And then I was telling her down here, we have a chain of grocery stores, kind of upscale grocery stores called Bristol Farms. And whereas I don't, buy my $8 gallon of milk there, I do think they have a fantastic chocolate chip cookie. So every once in a while, I'll stop in there and get a warm one. So if you've got a favorite you think I should know about, put it in the chat. Would love to hear that. So please don't be shy. Excited to be with you all again for this second session. Got a lot of ground to cover, but what I'd love to do is start off with a little review and kind of see what you remember from last time. All right, so you might remember last time we started this conversation about work-life balance, and we talked about a few things. And so I wanted to see if maybe a couple of you would be willing to maybe unmute yourself and share what are some things you remember from the last time that we were together. Or feel free to put something in the chat if there's an idea, a thought, a concept maybe that you remember from the last time that we were together. And maybe there's a couple folks that weren't here, so you get a pass on this one. So I'd love to hear maybe from a couple folks, either put in the chat or unmute yourself. What do you remember from the last time that we talked about? Don't be shy. Would a couple people be willing to share?
Yeah, I'll go. So
Thank you, Monique.
I know one of the things we talked about was like the whole wheel thing in regards to like how much attention are we paying to each of these areas. And it was good to visualize it so we can see like which ones were on the lower end that perhaps you wanted to spend more time on and which ones were on the high end type of a thing. So.
That's great. Thank you, Monique. Yeah, so we did this exercise called the Wheel of Life exercise, looking at the different areas of our lives. And we identified 8 different areas of our lives. And when you think about work-life balance, oftentimes we feel like, or we get a sense that maybe our life is out of balance, right? Or we aren't necessarily doing the things that we want to be doing, but we need to stop and we need to examine our lives, right? I think it was it Socrates or Thoreau that said the unexamined life isn't worth living. And so we need to examine our lives and begin to think about, well, how am I doing in each of these different areas? And where would I like to be investing more time or maybe less time potentially? And so the Wheel of Life is just our attempt to help you do that, to begin to think about how satisfied am I in these different areas of my life. And that's the kind of thing that you can keep returning back to again and again and again. I would say specifically, do it during different seasons of your life. I don't know about you, but whenever there's a holiday, we change the batteries in our smoke detectors. That's usually what they say, right? Whenever the next holiday rolls around, change those batteries. So maybe think about, when are the different seasons in your life when you could revisit that wheel of life that would help you think about your priorities, because they will change depending on the season. Yeah, so that's one of the things that we talked about. Fantastic. Sorry, I kind of went on my little sermon there about the wheel of life. But what are some other things that you remember from last time? Anything else stand out? And don't be shy.
I actually want to apologize. We had a power outage at CTC, so I missed the session completely.
Oh my, oh no. Well, hopefully the power got back on and you were able
Well,
to.
it did, but after hours, like I think PG estimated at 6 p.m. and so we were already gone.
Oh my goodness. Okay, all right. Well, that recording will be up, so you can, yeah, you'll be able to definitely check out that. And then if you've got the note sheet, oh, which I should actually put in the chat. So let me put in, if any of you didn't get a chance to download the participant guide, let me just quick put a link in the chat to our Dropbox where you could download that. So that might be another great tool and resource. There'll be some things that probably won't make sense, but you'll actually see that wheel of life in there and some different things like that in that participant guide. So feel free to grab that link from the chat if you want to.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Bob.
You're very welcome. So something else you might remember by way of review, we also talked about this idea of a work-life balance versus work-life integration, that there are a couple different ways to look at this idea of work-life balance. And we looked at two different perspectives. One is more of a work-life balance perspective, which is about kind of setting pretty tight boundaries between your work and your life. And folks that have that perspective, which there's nothing wrong with that, they have certain work hours and they have certain hours where they don't do any work, and that's where they do their life and other things like that, right? Or there's the perspective of work-life integration, which is another way of looking at it, if you have the freedom to do this, is where these things are a little bit more intertwined. And maybe if you find yourself staying late at work or working later one night, well, you take maybe the next morning off, or something like that. You kind of balance it out. You don't mind maybe responding to emails over vacation and different things like that. So there's a couple different ways to look at it, but it's about how do you achieve the kind of life that you want to live and the kind of life that will give you the most energy so that you can be the most productive. So you also might remember, again, this is by way of review, we talked about what we call the PBR model, which just simply stands for, like it says on the screen, the idea that our perceptions lead to our behaviors that lead to the results that we get. So we think about the results that we get in life, right? We want to achieve certain goals at work. We want certain things out of our life. We want to certainly be satisfied and engaged in the things that we're doing. Well, we really don't have control over the results. What we have control over are our perceptions and our behaviors. So our perceptions are nothing more than how we see the world and the interpretations we make about them. So one perception is, do you see life more like work-life balance or more like work-life integration? And the principles that you base your life on will impact those perceptions. And so that's what we've been talking about, are some principles to think about and to consider when you think about your own pursuit of work-life balance. And then specifically getting into what are some behaviors. And the main principle that we've been talking about is this, that we must work, rest, and play to be truly effective in all areas of our lives. It's not just about being all about work. It's not just about being all about rest or all about play, but we need to think about these areas of our lives and how do we best integrate those and make sure that they are in balance and that they are in harmony in order to be effective in all of those areas. If we were all about play, obviously we aren't going to be effective at work. If we were all about work, we're not going to actually be ultimately effective at work because we haven't thought about those other areas of our lives. So we did the wheel of life exercise. We identified different areas of your life, thought about even what's at the center of that. And we did some exercises then looking at, okay, what do you need to do? And you even wrote yourself a letter at the end of our time that you can maybe send yourself later. So let's go into our next section then. So we're going to be talking about values and how important it is to know not only our personal values, but knowing the values of our organization. So here's your first chance to contribute again. And for those of you that weren't here before, want to assure you that this session will be highly participatory. So we want to hear from everybody here in the room, so to speak. And so feel free to unmute yourself or put something in the chat. How would you answer this question? How does knowing your organization's values contribute to work-life balance? All right, so think about that. All of our organizations, we have values. Some of them are stated, some of them maybe are a little unclear. But how would knowing what your organization values really contribute to your own sense of well-being in terms of your work-life balance? So again, feel free to unmute yourself, put some thoughts in the chat. What do you think? How are those two things related?
Hi, I'm LaShawn.
Hello, Sean.
I think how they would relate and work together would be the fact that if your organization really does value your mental health, it kind of it'll work itself out with you trying to monitor your own self-care. So when they both can relate and meet at a certain point, you know, you yourself as a worker, you know that you're feeling valued because at least your job, your organization is letting you know, hey, it's okay that, you know, things are tough right now, maybe in the office or at home. We'll figure it out. As long as they can back you up and you feel that support, I think that's how knowing your organization's values kind of contributes to your work-life balance.
Yep, that's a great example, right? Yeah, if you're in an organization and you know that they value your whole life, you know, and it's not just about squeezing as much productivity out of you, but they realize that that actually isn't going to get much productivity out of you, that's really going to help your sense of well-being there. Yeah, that's good. And then Ariane had put in the chat, so you know where to focus your work-related efforts. Yeah, that's exactly true, right? If you, you know, without kind of that focus, you could be going in all kinds of different directions. But if you know what your organization values, now you know where to put your energies, and you can focus those energies a lot better. And Carrie, you have to know that the values of the organization are something that you can work with. If there's no alignment between the two, it seems it would be difficult to engage fully at work. Carrie, the great comment. Would you mind unmuting yourself and kind of explaining that a little bit more? Would unpack that for us, if you will.
Well, it's not something that I say it seems it would be difficult because I actually, you know, seem to align pretty well with the values that I get in my work area, at least here on campus. But it seems like there would be a lot of conflict, both with yourself and with your coworkers, if you didn't have that similar work base to move forward from.
Oh yeah, imagine how frustrating it would be, and maybe some of you have experienced this. Imagine how frustrating it would be if you're in an organization and your values and the organization's values are at cross purposes, right? You know, so maybe you value work-life balance, but they don't, right? I recently read an article, I think it was in the New York Times, about people that graduated from college and go into investment banking on Wall Street. And they're being asked to work, you know, 80, 90, 100 hours a week. And so many recent college grads are saying, we don't want to do that anymore. You know, we just can't do that. That's not healthy for anybody. And so they're seeing kind of how they're at a bit of a crossroads in those situations. And so, yeah, you're going to be way more satisfied and you're going to be way more effective if your personal values line up with your organization's values. So here's what I'd love for everybody to do, and we'll see how this goes, because sometimes an organization has stated values, sometimes they don't. But I want to give you just a couple minutes to maybe explore. You can go on the website maybe of the college or wherever you would find these and find out, maybe you know these already, find out the values of your organization. So what are the values of Fresno City College? And then to think about, what do those values mean and how do I live out those values in your work? Oh, Susie just put something in there. We got a great mission statement in the chat. All right. So here's what I'd love for you to do is take a minute and maybe go to that website that Susie just put in the chat and go see what the values are of the college. And then on your participant guide, there are some places where you could write those down. All right. So you can see where you can write down the values of your organization, and then to think about what do those values mean and how do you live those values out in your work. All right. So we've got growth, leadership, success. Fantastic. Thank you, Susie. I love it. All right. So let me give everybody just a couple minutes to do this. All right. So I want you to really focus in on how do you then live out those values at work. Let's define those a little bit. So take 2 minutes just kind of working on your own. We've got growth, leadership, and success here. On the participant guide, jot a couple thoughts. You can do this on a spreadsheet of paper. What do those values mean to you? And then specifically, how do you live those values out? All right, so let me just give you a minute or two to do that. Let me just give you like another 30 seconds for this. Again, you've got these 3 values. Maybe there's more, but we can focus in on those 3. And then just jot down a couple thoughts. What does that mean to you? And then maybe a couple of ideas about how you live those out in your work. Okay, let's hear from maybe 1 or 2 folks. So we've got these 3 values. Maybe you discovered a couple others. Would anybody be willing to unmute themselves and just kind of share about, maybe pick one of those values? What does it mean to you, and how do you live that out? How do you find congruence between kind of your values and that value? Who haven't we heard from? How about Dana? Would you mind unmuting yourself and sharing? Maybe Dana's being a little shy right now. How about Debbie Nichols? How about you? Would you be willing to unmute yourself? People are being shy, I think. Would a volunteer be willing to unmute yourself and talk to us about, how do you connect with those values? How do you live those out in your work?
I can try.
Thank you, Becky.
I guess I just took it really literal.
Yeah.
What did they mean to me? Growth, leadership, and success pretty much means that the institution is invested in my growth, leadership, and success. And then how do I live out these values in my work? In terms of growth, I feel like I help mentor and foster other people's growth. And then for leadership, I'm always trying to expand my leadership within the institution. So like just recently this year, I became a classified senator, just trying to be a little more involved.
Nice. Yeah.
And then for success, I feel like I accomplished the success piece by just working on projects that have value and meaning that's going to contribute to either my peers, the faculty and staff, administration, or even better, supporting students.
Yep, that's great. That's fantastic. And so what this can do for us, right, is to begin to think about what does the organization value, and then how can I align my work better with those values, right? It helps us to know how to focus. It's been said that a multiplicity of focus kills vision. It also kills motivation, right? So the more we know what our organization is focused on, the better we can focus our efforts, right? And then say no to those things that actually don't contribute to the things that are important to us and our organization. That's a real key to that work-life balance. And so the other thing that's important is to be clear on your own values. So let me ask this. We've already talked about this a little bit. Again, feel free to unmute yourself, put a thought in the chat. Why is it important to be clear on your own values when it comes to work-life balance? So why do you think? Why is it important to know what we value in order to have a healthy degree of work-life balance? What do you think?
I would say because you don't want your values to disappear when you're working for an organization. You want to make sure, as someone mentioned previously, that it's a match.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, as a job developer, I meet with students, I help them find, try to get them gainful employment. But my values, I have to think of how would I look for work for myself when I did it. What did I look for? What did I pay attention to? Did I read the descriptions for the job that I applied for? So I tend to bring those values into the already set values I have for my position, and make sure that I do for my students exactly what I would do for myself.
Mm-hmm. That's so great. That's so great, right? And anytime we're not doing that, if you're in a position where you're not able to do that, and this is true for all of us, we're going to feel more stressed out, right? We're going to feel way more tired and way more burnt out if, again, our values, our personal values, are at cross purposes with the organization. And I love it, Arian, put in there in the job description, right? So it's important to even consider cultural empowerment, bravery, student advocacy. If those aren't your values, if you can't align with those, you're going to have a hard time. And it's going to get really frustrating for you. And so the more that your personal values line up with your organization's values, again, the more satisfied you're going to be, the more energy you're going to find in the work that you do, and the less stress that you're going to be. So it's important that we really define what those values are for us. And so I'm going to give you just 2 minutes again to just give some thought to this idea. All right, maybe you've done something like this before where you've outlined your values, but again, on the note sheet, on the participant guide, jot a couple thoughts on there. What are your values? And then what do those words mean, and how do you live them out? So for example, somebody might have a value of staying fit, right? Maybe this is a value that you have. And so we'll define that. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, that means that, I want a certain level of energy, or I want to have a certain weight, or I want to have a certain stamina, however you define that. And then how do I live that out? Well, that means, maybe for somebody, they do yoga 5 times a day, or they go to the gym, or they walk 5 miles a day, or 20 minutes a day, whatever they do, right? And so think about, what is that value? Well, what does that mean? How do you define that? And then what are the behaviors that allow you to live into that value? All right. So again, maybe you've done something that's before, maybe not, but I think it's a real valuable exercise to take a few minutes to do this. So let me give you just 2 minutes to jot some thoughts on your participant guide, or you can use just a scratch sheet of paper next to you. Jot, maybe 2, 3, 4 values, and then some thoughts on what do they mean and how do you live those out. So let me do that. And then we're actually going to put you some breakout rooms, and you're going to talk about some of the things that you've discovered here. So 2 minutes to do that. Off you go. All right, one more minute. Again, identifying maybe 2, 3 of your personal values. And what do you mean by that? And how do you live that out? Okay, hopefully you've had enough time to jot down a couple thoughts at least about some of those values. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to put you in some breakout rooms for about 5-6 minutes or so. And I would love for you to take some time and each person just kind of maybe go around the room. There's going to be 3 of you in the room and just share maybe what are a couple of your personal values? What do those mean to you and how do you live those out? And then talk about how do you live those values out in your organization as well. So these are, obviously things you're going to live out in terms of your personal life, but then also how do these align with the values of the organization as well. All right. So I'm going to give you 6 minutes to talk about those things in your room, and then we'll come back and then we'll continue on here. Any questions before I open up the rooms?
No.
All right. Sounds good. Hold on one second. Let me do one quick little move here. All right, okay. We'll see you back here then in 6 minutes. All right, welcome back, everybody. So maybe there's some commonalities in the rooms that you were in, but maybe you have some different values and you live those out differently, and that's okay. The key is, when you think about your personal values, is to clarify those as much as possible. So again, you're not pulled in all kinds of different directions, but you know what to say yes to, you know what to say no to, in light of what you value, in light of what's important to you. And then when you think about your organizational values, it's important to align yourself with those as much as possible. And you think about, to the outside world, you are the brand ambassador for your organization, for Fresno City College. And so you want to think about, how do I live those out in my life? And then to make sure that you are aligning your life with those values as well, and that you're in an organization that aligns well with your own personal values. So this idea of really clarifying what's important to us is a real key step towards making sure that we have a healthy degree of work-life balance. So we want to talk about this idea of stress. All right. So we're going to talk about some stress reduction techniques in just a second, which I think will be super helpful. But I want to ask this question first. Real simple question. Is all stress bad for us? So put in the chat, what do you think? Give me a yes or a no in the chat. Let's have everybody pop your thought in here. Give me a yes or a no. I should have created a poll for this one, maybe. That would have been fun. Getting a bunch of no's. Okay, all right, yeah. Wholeheartedly agree, right? Not all stress is bad. In fact, the research has shown, and we all know this, that we need a certain degree of stress in our lives. Think about, if any of you are guitar players or musicians, that think about a guitar, that if there isn't some stress in the strings, it's not going to sound very well. There needs to be some tension there. So tension and stress can be a really good thing, but if it reaches an extreme point, if it gets too high, then it becomes detrimental. Okay, so here's my question then. What is the high cost of high stress? So what does a high level, an unhealthy level of stress, what does it cost us as individuals? What does it cost our organizations? So again, either unmute yourself, put something in the chat. What are your thoughts on that?
Workers' comps. If somebody go out on a stress leave, it will cost the organization money, because you don't know when they're going to be back and how long, and it's time and money, and you're also losing a person that a position that that needs to be filled.
Mm-hmm.
As for the individual, I would think that probably the health, the mental health, emotional health, and their health in general.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We're seeing a few of those things come in, like health. People put our own health, the organization's health, our own happiness. Yeah. Yeah. Stress is often, leads to like physical sickness, right? And so people, they're taking more days off, right? And they need more of that kind of personal time off and things like that, which is going to leave departments shorthanded and different things like that. So all kinds of different things. And then, when people are high stressed, when they are at work, they don't function at as high level as they could. And so they start to make mistakes, sometimes large mistakes that could ultimately hurt things in the long run. So there's all kinds of different ways that we can think about the high cost of high stress. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to put you into some breakout rooms. Maybe we'll keep you with we'll just keep you with the same groups that you had before. But I want you to discuss these following 2 questions. Do some brainstorming. What can organizations and people do specifically to reduce stress? So this is your time to kind of share some best practices, right? What do you do to reduce stress in your life? What maybe have you seen your organization do? What have you seen other organizations do? What have you heard from your friends or colleagues? So let's brainstorm. Maybe as a room, try to come up with 5 or 6 different things. Okay. So again, just going to give you 5 minutes in your breakout rooms to do this. And then we'll have one representative from each group come back and give us a report after that. All right. So as a room, just kind of brainstorm. What have you seen done? What do you do? What do other organizations do? All right. Let me open up the rooms. Like I said, we'll keep you in the same rooms as before. So you'll be with the same people kind of for ease there. All right. We'll see you back here in 5 minutes. So again, specifically, you're talking about what can organizations do and people do to reduce stress. So be as specific as you can. Off you go. We'll see you back here in 5. All right, welcome back, everybody. Well, hopefully you were able to brainstorm some good ideas there. So I'd love to just have each group report back. Maybe just take 30 seconds. Let us know what were some of the ideas that you came up with. It'd be fun for probably the other groups to hear. So how about let's have the room with John, Monique, and Susie go first.
So I'm excited because we were all kind of in agreement. But one of the things that we talked about was, I don't know if this is anything like our managers have the power to do, but if we were to move to like working 4 days a week rather than working 5 days, and we kind of talked about how stressful it is because you don't have time to run errands, when you work an 8 to 5. And so, or you spend your whole Saturday running errands, doing what you have to do, and Sunday. So next thing you know, it's Monday and back at work, and it's like, where did my weekend go? I was cheated.
Huh.
So, doing something like that, or even John mentioned that they have where they close on one day of the week, they close their office a little earlier, at least only to students, and this allows them to get work done, where they don't have, students coming in and stuff. And I know we all love our students and serving them, but sometimes it becomes overwhelming when you have so much work to do, and then there's like a constant traffic. It doesn't allow you to get to what you need to do, and then builds the stress and all of that.
Very interesting.
But if
Yeah.
there's any district people in here, let me tell y'all, 4 days a week, like, start whispering it to your bosses.
There's not one.
Oh, dang.
There you go. Great ideas. Yeah, to kind of think about how can we maybe do things a little bit differently, right? And what does that look like? Yeah, good stuff. How about the room with is it Becky, Dana, Susie, and Z?
So for organization, there's some organizations that make you take your vacation time.
Oh.
So you have to, vacation is mandatory. You must take it.
Mm-hmm.
Allow mental health days. Z worked for a corporation where you got a mental health day. You could call in and just say, I'm taking a mental health day, no questions asked.
Mm-hmm.
And similar to what Monique said, allow a flexibility in our schedule.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's good. Yeah, maybe move to more of that work-life integration model that we talked about before. Yeah, and think about what that looks like. That's good. All right, and then how about the room with Arian, Carrie, LaShawn, and Rebecca? What are some of the ideas that you all generated?
So I had kind of a list. So it was vacation time off work, like Susie mentioned, and then also sick time. And one thing I forgot to mention during our group is also time off for people who have experienced violence. Because as a trans person, every time I'm attacked, the next day I can't get any work done. Like my brain cannot focus because I'm just trying to get rid of the PTSD. So that would be really helpful. Also, department retreats are pretty cool because then we get to develop relationships between our coworkers. And sometimes that helps like to relieve the strain on relationships where you just didn't know your coworker very well. And so then when you like do activities together, you get to learn each other and realize, oh, they're actually just more like this kind of person, you know? And so that kind of helps with some of the stress at work because sometimes we think one way about people and then we realize like, no, we were totally wrong. And just making bad assumptions, and we actually didn't know them that well. Also sabbaticals, not that we classify staff get to have them, but I think that they are pretty cool for faculty because that gives them the time off to go pursue an interest that they have and to make an impact on the college, to improve the college. And so I think that it would be really cool. And also just improving basic processes and procedures and technology here at the college. One of our colleagues in our group mentioned how frustrating it is when we're trying to get work done during a busy week, like the start of semester, and the software is just super slow. The system, the database that we have to pull from is like, it just locks up because everyone's using it. So, you know, technology is great until it's not. Yeah, that's everything that we came up with.
Yeah. Oh, what? Yeah. Great list. Yeah. I love it. You covered a lot of different things there, right? You know, from, you know, helping, you know, those that are maybe have more traumatic experiences and, you know, after that kind of thing, it can be really hard to be in the right mindset, you know, to be productive, who's thinking about work, you know, after those sorts of things. And then, you know, thinking about, yeah, how can we be more flexible in how we maybe structure things? And then to think about, you know, the systems and the processes that we're using, are those bogging us down or are they helping us, right? You know, earlier we talked about, you know, we're talking about stress, right? And researchers have identified two kinds of stress that you can have in your work life. And there's challenge stressors and hindrance stressors, right? Those challenge stressors are those really good things, right? It's like, hey, you know, maybe I've never done this job before, but okay, I'm going to give it a shot, right? This could be kind of cool. I'm going to take on the challenge. Hindrance stressors are those things that come along like a piece of technology that doesn't work, or a system or process that's broken, or maybe red tape in the organization that we just kind of keep, you know, banging our head against the wall, and they actually hinder us from getting our work done. And what we find is challenge stressors, we need those in our lives, but those hindrance stressors are those things that cause us to be more demotivated and to increase that level of real negative stress. And so appreciate you talking about a lot of those things. Yeah, I would jump in on a couple things that we've already talked about, like continuing to clarify your values and only focusing in on what's important. You know, mentors of mine always talked about, you should only be doing what only you can do. Right. And, you know, there oftentimes, especially if we're in a leadership or a management role, managing other people, we can tend to take on work that we could actually delegate to other people. And the rule of delegation is always, if somebody else could do something 80% as well as you, well, then let them do it. And so to think about, are you only doing what only you can do? And that's a good rule of thumb to think about. And then build capacity in your people. That's what it's great about doing leadership development, things like this, is to think about, well, what do the people that are on my team or others in my department, what do they need so that they could maybe take on some of this workload, right? So think about building the capacity of the people that are around you so that they could handle more and so that you could offload more and get more of that balance in your life, right? So those are a few things to think about. So training, education, even for yourself, right? Building your own capacity increases your own ability to take on more and to handle more. And so for your own education, your own, you know, getting skills and different things like that are really going to help you experience less stress in your life. Good thoughts. Yeah. Thank you so much. I was jotting a bunch of those down. I really, really like that. All right. Oftentimes what this comes down to is this idea that, and I know I've experienced this, but we tend to really value working a lot. And again, this can be true, or different cultures can look at this differently, potentially, right? We've talked about this at the very start, right? Maybe kind of the work ethic of your culture can sometimes get us to be in this mind space where we think, well, if I'm not constantly working, there must be something wrong with me. Or if I'm not constantly working, then I'm really not as valuable as I want to be, or I think I am. So one of the questions we often ask people is, what are the challenges of working with or for a workaholic? So let's say you're working either alongside somebody that it's just all about work, right? And they can't ever think about stopping or resting or adding any margin to their lives, or working for somebody like that. So what are the challenges of that? So put that in the chat, or feel free to unmute yourself. What do you think? What are the challenges of working with or for a workaholic?
From my experience,
No, go ahead.
okay. From my experience, the challenge of working with a workaholic, they tend to forget their team, and they tend to like put that kind of like on the back burner. So like if I don't know if there's bullying going on, they don't really see that because they're so focused on finishing what they need to finish on. So they're not really supporting their team and not really helping their team, I guess. Just from my experience.
Yeah, thank you very much. Are there a couple others that had something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I feel like I am a workaholic at times, but it's the never-ending work when you work for somebody or with somebody, because they're constantly, working and stuff like that. Then they constantly have work for you to do, and not realizing they perhaps, you're not focused on the weekends as well and all this other stuff. So it's kind of like that ongoing tasks and extra work.
Yep. Yeah, they kind of expect that others are going to want to do the same thing, right? And they kind of can push that on other people. Yeah.
I don't know if it's a challenge, but more of like a motivation that I've experienced when working for a workaholic is seeing them work really hard makes other people want to work harder. So I guess it's more of like a motivation. But when I had a boss who like worked super hard, was working from like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., 5 days a week, like it was really cool to see that kind of dedication. And it made a lot of us kind of aspire to higher levels of performance and work longer hours as well, because we wanted to be a part of that kind of change in the world.
Yeah. And it goes back to what we talked about earlier, right? When talking about look at your values, and do your values kind of line up with that? And so thankfully that person that was working that hard demonstrated values that were important to you, right? And it was something that you felt like, yeah, I want to give more of my time to this. And that's the other thing that you'll find too. I'd say people will work even harder, like we had talked about before, if what they're doing aligns with their personal values, and they'll work even harder if they know they're in an environment of, that you might say, an environment of grace or an environment of caring and support, right? If there isn't a sense of, I'm going to put you under some kind of standard of performance, but I'm going to paint a picture of a compelling vision that we can go for together, right? That's what's going to kind of draw our deepest wells of energy and resources that we have. It isn't, these hard and fast rules that we're going to put people under. But I share this point because oftentimes this is what can get us into trouble, is this idea that if we're not working all the time 24/7, then it speaks to our character, or it speaks to our self-worth, right? Oftentimes we wear busyness like a badge of honor. And if somebody asks us how we're doing, and if we don't say back to them, I'm really busy, then we're going to wonder if they wonder about us, and if they think, why are we even on this planet, right? So I think we need to do some reframing around this and begin to think, is that actually good? Is that actually healthy? And is that a good way of looking at the world? Because the reality is, I don't think anybody really enjoys working with a workaholic, right? Nobody really enjoys over time working with somebody that doesn't have a personal life, or doesn't ever slow down or put margins in their lives. So we need to think about, do we wear that workaholism as a badge of honor, or do we see potentially the potential negative repercussions of that, as it were? So ask yourself, why am I so busy, right? Am I really that important? Or am I just trying to prove something to myself or other people? Is busyness just a mechanism to prop up my self-worth? I think it's a mindset that we need to consider. So What I want to do now for our last little section here is have you take a look at a bunch of different ideas that we've curated in your participant guide for how to reduce stress, all right, and how to achieve a greater level of work-life balance. And so we've got, I didn't count them, maybe 15, 20 ideas in your participant guide, starting on page 8 of your participant guide. All right, so what I'd love for everybody to do is to take some time right now, maybe take just like 3 minutes and quickly scan over those ideas, okay? And maybe read a little bit deeper into a couple that seem most interesting to you, again, in your participant guide. And then what I'm going to do is put you into breakout rooms in pairs, and you're going to talk about ideas that you plan to implement and how you're going to go about that. So scan, what are some of these that are kind of interesting to you, and then pick out maybe 2 or 3 that you want to implement. And then in your breakout rooms, you're going to talk about, okay, what could you do over the course of the next few, even days, weeks, or months to implement that particular idea. All right, so again, focus in now, just take a couple minutes, starting on page 18 of your participant guide. You've got a bunch of different ideas, starts with about setting manageable goals, be efficient with your time at work, different things like that. So take a couple minutes, pick out a couple, and then we'll put you into some breakout groups to talk about what you want to do and what you're going to do. All right, off you go, 2 minutes for this. All right, take another 30 seconds. I know there's a lot of ideas there, but maybe scan, pick 2 or so that you feel like you want to zero in on over the course of the next couple days or weeks. All right, here's what I'm gonna do. Put you back into some breakout rooms. Gonna give you, let's do 6 minutes for this and talk about what are the ideas that you want to implement, and then just share some ideas for how you can go about implementing those maybe over the course of the next couple days or few weeks or so. Okay, so what are the maybe 2 or 3 that you picked out, and what are you gonna do over the course of the next couple of weeks to implement those ideas? All right, I broke up the room a little bit, so you're gonna be with maybe some of the same people, but maybe some different people, but we'll give you 6 minutes for this. Any questions before I open up the rooms? All right, off you go. We'll see you back here in 6 minutes, and then we'll close up with a couple final thoughts. All right, welcome back, everybody. So here's what I'd love for you to do is in the chat feature, open that up and actually type in one or two of those strategies that you want to try to implement, but don't hit send. All right, don't hit return yet. All right, so we're gonna have you just type those in, and then I tell you to, then we'll have everybody hit return, and so we'll see everybody's ideas or the things that they want to implement to reduce stress in their lives. So take a second, jot down what are those one or two things, maybe two or three that you want to do. Give you a few more seconds. All right, so hopefully you've had a chance now to type in, a couple of the ideas. So now everybody hit enter, and then we'll have the chat populated with what you're gonna do. Nice, good. Set manageable goals, don't overcommit, stay active, take 5, give yourself a break, exercise, meditate, tune in. Manageable goals, don't overcommit. Establish work hours, good stuff, love it. Set boundaries, say no, yes, huge, that's fantastic. Love it. All right, good. So last step then is, okay, so we've all got these ideas that we want to implement. So now let's develop a plan. All right, so you all have on your learner guide, your learner guide, a space on page 13 where you can jot down your key items that you found useful today. Certainly would encourage you to do that. But what I want to focus in on is the SMART goal section. Okay, so you've all decided on a few things that you want to implement. Well, now let's dive deeper. Let's figure out, what are you going to do? How can you implement that? You're probably all familiar with SMART goals. You want things to be specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time bound. All right. So for maybe, in the chat, maybe, one of you said you want to say no. All right. So maybe that. So specifically, what does that mean? All right. So that means I'm going to say no to anything that would cause me to have to work on a Saturday afternoon. Whatever it is, be very specific. What are you going to say no to? So try to be as specific as you can. Okay. So I'm going to give you, again, another just probably 2 minutes here in light of time to take one of those things. What's one of those action items, and try to create a specific SMART goal around that. All right. And you see an example on page 13 of the learner guide. You see, ensure I take at least one day off of work from work-related tasks, right? Either you did it or you didn't. It's within your control. You can take a few weeks to form a habit. You can do it, and you're going to start this weekend. All right. So try to jot some thoughts in that SMART goal worksheet that you have on page 14. Just going to give you, again, 2 minutes to do this. Choose one of those things that you want to do and create a SMART goal around it. Again, this is just brainstorming here. We're not necessarily going to commit you to it. You don't have to do this necessarily, but at least brainstorm. What could you do? What's a goal that you could do? All right, so take a few minutes and do that right now. And you're working on page 14 of your participant guide. Take another 45 seconds for this. I know it's not tons of time. Hopefully you can jot a couple thoughts though. Well, would there be one or two folks that would be willing to unmute yourself and share with us, be so bold as to share what's the goal that you're going to set? So what's the area and what's the goal? Would there be one or two folks that be willing to do that? Don't be shy. We're not going to commit. We're not going to hold you to it. It's fine.
I can.
Thank you. Go for it.
So one of the goals that I what stood out was, establishing like office hour times. And we work our whole 8 to 5, but I think like being more specific as far as blocking time, like this is when I will meet and talk to students. This is time where I will work on this specific project, and that just ensures that I'm getting things done, because right now it's just kind of chaotic. So I try working on something and then I get interrupted like 10 times. Even during these trainings I have my camera off because there's people that are going to constantly come to my cubicle and ask me questions. They see that I'm in training and they're like, oh, you're in a training, well, can I still ask you a question, or can you still help me? So I think establishing office hours and then making sure that I set boundaries with myself, to not only sticking to them but with others, like, hey, either shoot me an email or wait till I'm done with this meeting, or we can meet tomorrow, something like that.
Yeah, love it. Thank you so much. That's a great one. Love it. How about one more? Let's hear from one more person. What's a goal you're going to set? Don't be shy.
I'll go, Bob.
Thank you.
So I'm going to say no to anything that's not directly related to my job.
Oh, yeah.
Which is tough, right? Your boss asks you to do something, you can't say that's not my, and I don't want, that's not my job.
I get it.
Come at it from the perspective of, I'm already busy, so overworked doing my job. I can't have one more thing added.
Yep. I love it. Yeah, that's great. Fantastic. Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, everybody. So we've covered a lot of ground, right? So we've talked about some principles that lead to perceptions that are going to hopefully change some behavior to get you better results. And again, the whole idea is that we've got to work, rest, and play to be truly effective in all areas of our lives. If all we do is work, even our work is going to suffer. If all we do is play, even the play is going to suffer, right? We want to make sure that we have all of those things in balance. You might want to take a screenshot of this. Here's 3 great books that you could read, could help you with this. Patrick Lencioni's 3 Signs of a Miserable Job, The Work Revolution by Julie Clow, and of course, classic Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. There's probably other great resources out there, but these are 3 that we definitely recommend if you want to check that out. That's all I've got. I have put in the chat a survey. We'd love to get your feedback on your experience during this time. Even if this was the only one of the 2 parts that you were able to go to, please grab that link. I'll put it in there one more time. Grab that link and fill that out. There's just a couple of questions. Should only take you like even a minute to kind of fill that out quickly for us. Would love to get your thoughts. I want to be sensitive to your time. Hopefully this was helpful to you. If you want to reach out, if you have other questions, other thoughts you want to bounce off me, there's my contact information on the slide. Just bob.foose@newleaftd.com. But let me hand it back to Susie real quick for some final thoughts before we let y'all go.
So as Bob mentioned, there's the evaluation. The only way we can improve what we do is if by you letting us know what we can do better and what we did a great job with. So he dropped the link in the chat. At 4:30, our event software is going to send you another email reminding you. Don't want to over bombard you, but it's already set to go. Thank you, Bob, for doing this. Thank you for coming to Fresno City College. I wasn't able to be Monday, but this was great, and I can't wait for the next one, which is in September 20th and 24th. And we'll be discussing time management. We'll have another facilitator, but Bob will be back for, I think it's our 3rd, personal and interpersonal relationships, communication.
Yep. Probably in October or something like that. Yep.
So that's it. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Becky. Thank you, Bob, and everybody have a great weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.